This show is brought to you by Betkoza, an opportunity for you to make a little bit of money.
Stand a chance to win one of 10 money can't buy soccer experiences with Tokosan and our partners. Dial *120*1149# and follow the prompts to enter. Experience a night out for two at the prestigious induction dinner of Dr. Kaiser Mtaung, including luxury accommodation at one of our Tokosan hotels. VIP tickets for two to the Soweto Derby and accommodation at Gold Reef City Theme Park. Plus, an exclusive invite to lunch with some of the Kaiser Chiefs legends. Enter this once-in-a-lifetime competition today. Competition ends 3 November. T's and C's apply. Entertain. It's what we do.
Welcome to the Fut-Afrique channel, where every single week over the last 2 months or so, you and I have been talking about all things rugby, specifically focusing on the 2023 Rugby World Cup that was hosted in France. Now we find ourselves about 3 days after the tournament has been done and dusted, and we can finally relax. We as South Africans are the champions yet again, back-to-back champions, but most importantly, now we can consider ourselves the best playing rugby team in the world now that we've won it 4 times. The Springboks are champions yet again, and to almost celebrate this special achievement, I've brought in a man that we started this whole campaign with. His name is Mpho, but also I want to keep him a little bit accountable for some of the predictions that he made on the show. I'm sure you know what they are, but we'll ask him in just a few minutes. Mpho, how are you doing?
Hi Aaron, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming back to the Fut-Afrique channel. Number one, before we celebrate the victory from the Springboks, I need to keep you accountable for those predictions that you made. You said that Wales were going to beat Argentina. You said that Ireland were going to beat the All Blacks. And then you said that the host nation, France, were going to beat the Springboks in the quarterfinals. Where did you get it wrong?
Where did I get it wrong? I got it wrong from the beginning. Argentina played an incredible second half. They haven't given us they didn't give us 80 minutes of good rugby the whole tournament, but somehow they managed to give us good 40 minutes of rugby. And then Ireland, New Zealand, Southern Hemisphere teams just have that thing, man. I just missed it, eh? I just doubted the Southern Hemisphere teams, and I'm sorry for doubting the Southern Hemisphere teams.
Let's talk about what the Springboks did so well. And we have to take a moment to acknowledge and to celebrate the fact that heading into this tournament, there were many concerns. I mean, over the last 4 years, we didn't play the best rugby. Heading into this tournament, we were concerned about Lukhanyo Am, we were concerned about Lloyd de Jager, we were concerned about Handré Pollard. There were so many question marks, and I just want to dive into your mind. What did the Springboks do well, and what made this campaign so incredibly special?
Look, I think when the campaign started, when the World Cup campaign started, Jacques and Rassie had a plan, and it worked out. They don't play pretty rugby. It sometimes doesn't come off well. Yes, the game against Australia early in the year was amazing, and that was probably one of the few moments where it was flowing. Even the game against New Zealand, it was flowing. But the one thing that the Springbok team has is heart. They have belief. They have a never say die attitude. And in a game of rugby where you always have to front up to your opponent, that is something you can never doubt. If you look at the 3 games in the quarterfinal against France, you were supposed to lose that game, but somehow they held on. In the semi-final against England, England played better than the Springboks for 77 games. 3 minutes in, with 3 minutes to go, the Springboks took over. That doesn't go away. And then the final of all finals, if you look at the stats, even across all the other knockout games, the Springboks were supposed to lose. They missed 38 tackles. They did all these bad things. You know, they conceded more penalties than the All Blacks, which you never do, in kickable positions. But they came through largely because of that never say die spirit. They just don't go down fighting. And when they fight against you, and this is the one thing maybe that the other teams in World Rugby can never replicate. Maybe the All Blacks can, but it's the physicality that the Springboks give. Because you know, if you beat them, you are going to hurt. And that's the one thing that I think they had over everyone else, is that they couldn't account for that physicality. But the one thing that they did with the plan was that bomb squad. The bomb squad worked again. everyone in the world had 4 years to work around and they couldn't. But the one big thing was the versatility. We saw the different hookers. We saw the different, like going with 2 hookers instead of taking Joseph Dweba, going with 4 scrum halves. That's the type of thinking that Jacques and Rassie were putting in to be a versatile team, to be a team where if the situation demands, and if you look at it, we turned a flank in Dion Fourie, who hadn't played hooker in 5 years, into a World Cup hooker for 77 minutes. That is testament to Rassie and Jacques and the team that they built around of versatile guys. And they managed to ride the storm and they managed to get home. And you can't write this team off. And even in 2027, we're going to be seeing the same level of thinking and the same level of planning. And World Cups are won in the planning stages. Jacques and Rassie planned perfectly.
You talk about Jacques, you talk about Rassie Erasmus and how well they've done. I want to also shine a spotlight on the fact that the Springboks on the field did so well, winning games by a single point. I mean, quarterfinal, semi-final, and then the final. But also the fact that we played the best rugby playing nations throughout this whole tournament. I mean, we played Ireland, we played Scotland, we then played England, we played France. Can we say that, unlike football, where sometimes, you don't necessarily have the 2 best teams playing the final, that we are worthy of saying that we are world champions because we've proven to the best nations that we can beat you, even if it's just by a single point?
Look, any World Cup situation is a marathon, and it's the team that outlasts everybody that gets in the end. Even in soccer, that's the same thing, right? You still have to win. You have to win 7 out of 8 games. Let's say you lose one in the group stages like Argentina. But like for rugby, it's the same thing. You have to win at the right moments, and you will play the best teams in the world. You could say this is probably the greatest ever World Cup triumph, to beat 5 of the 6 best teams in the world, and you're the 6th team in that thing to get to a World Cup crown. And I think that's something, we'll talk about the legacy later on, but that's something this box can take away. I think this is the greatest ever World Cup win that we have seen.
Talking about the fact that the Springboks have done so well, I want to almost shift the conversation to shining a spotlight on some of the key players. I want to put you on the spot. Your top 3 players at this year's Rugby World Cup.
Look, I know everyone's going to go with Eben and Peter Steff, and I think they had a great knockout stages. And Peter Steff actually had a great tournament. He came through. Everyone wanted him to play at that level. Everyone thought he was going to go back to being a lock. They were like, he must just go back to being lock. But I'll give honorable mentions to Peter Steff, to Eben Etzebeth, and Franco Mostert. I think they were insane for the Springboks up front. However, for me, the Springbok players of the tournament is one, Kwagga Smith. Kwagga Smith is the
bomb
best.
Squad.
Yes, he is the best rugby player in the world to play half a World Cup. So for instance, there's a stat where he's got the most turnovers of anybody at the World Cup. That's the ruck play, get the ball on the other side when the opponent is their ruck. He's been in 10 rucks, he's been in 42 rucks. He's come out of in all the rucks he's been in, he's come out with the ball 42 times. 42% of the time.
That's incredible.
And that's the most of anybody at the World Cup. And bearing in mind, he's only played half the minutes because he's a bench player, right? But they needed that impetus against France. They needed his work rate against England and against the All Blacks. Remember the spider F5 tackle that Kirk, the Cheslin had.
We just grabbed the
and
ball.
then Kwagga just grabs the ball. He was immense. And I think if you look at like valuable players, he's the most valuable player in the Springbok team. He can play 6, he can play 7, he can play 8. He can even play in the back line. In the 7-1 split, he's the back line cover. We didn't get to see it. I'd have loved for everyone to see Kwagga Smith at center, but it would have been amazing.
Happen, yeah.
Yes. The other player for me is Ritsogo Faditswe, also known as Ox. Ox has come into the side as a youngster, wasn't there in 2019, but he's grown in leaps and bounds over the years. And this year, he's proven to be one of the best scrummagers in the world. Everybody now has to respect him. And we saw that in the knockout games against France, against England, and against Ireland. He kept that Springbok scrum going, and he effectively won us the game against England. And I'll be thankful for him. That's my second guy. And then finally, a guy who I said I'd always sit on the Mani side of the conversation, and I still do, even in the next
We had many debates about Mani, Handré Pollard.
Yes. But Handré Pollard, 13 out of 13 in the World Cup. That is insane. Yes, he hit the post in the first one of the World Cup.
So nerve-wracking.
Yeah, but he was immense. He kicked well out of hand. He has these up and unders that in the range cause so much, but he goes so high and it's beautiful. And the Springboks really enjoyed that. And in the final, he controlled the game along with Faf, and he always gave us a chance. And to a certain extent, when you've got 100 Pollard's boot where you can kick from above 50 meters, you've got it. And he played really well. And those are my 3 players of the tournament. I know they're not necessarily the mainstream guys who started the games, but those are the guys who, for me, were the players of the tournament.
You talk about Andre Pollard having this phenomenal ability to control the ball, control the game to a certain extent. I think I want you to almost compare rugby and football. Because in a big match, like a Rugby World Cup final, compared to a World Cup final, you can almost feel that in a football game, you can control the tempo, you can slow it down, you can almost pass backwards and ensure that your defenders can build up the ball again. But in rugby, and specifically this Rugby World Cup final, every single moment throughout the game, we were glued to our screens because at any point, anything could happen. There could be a line break, there could be a penalty that could change the tempo of the game and also change the scoreboard.
Yes, and to a certain extent, that's the thing with rugby and American football, right? There are sports where you have to run through the other guy. You can't run around him, you can't pass the ball over him. You can kick the ball over and you can pass the ball over them, that's fine. But essentially, you still always have to meet the guy. You always have to get tackled and try and get past them. And so essentially with soccer, you can move the ball around, you can play your low blocks and trough the ball around the back, move it around the middle, move the ball around where the players are, and play safe soccer, right? Once you've scored the goal, you do that to kind of slow the game down. In rugby, one of the few ways to slow the game down is actually giving the ball away, right? Yes, you're in contact, and yes, you can go through many rucks, and try and slow the game down that way. And the Springboks used to do that traditionally, right? They do have these one-off runners to slow the game down and have guys tackle, and that's the one way to control the game. But the issue with that is, if I get into a tackle, the ball can pop out.
Yes.
I could lose the ball because somebody came over the ruck and came illegally, right? And so that's essentially why it's very hard to control the game in rugby outside of playing in the opponent's half. And that's what the Springboks did in that final that is in their favor. They just played in the All Blacks half. Or, in essence, they played in the space between everyone's in between their 22 and the All Blacks 22. 56% of the game was there, 28% of the game was in the All Blacks 22, which shows you that Andre was putting the ball in their corner and saying, if you want to come, you need to run 100 meters to get past us, right? And when we're going to tackle you, we're going to tackle you in your half. So the ruck's going to be in your half and not in mine. So if I commit a penalty, I'm committing a penalty in your half and not in mine where you can kick. And so that's how you control the rugby. And in the France game, with 90 seconds to go, Faf kicked the ball away.
Yes.
And everyone was like, what are you doing? But essentially, it was Faf recognizing that he needs to kick a low. He didn't get it right, but he needed to kick a low and flat and long, and get the French to come at us and try to run past us, because we believe we can tackle them, right? And if we do tackle them, they're in their own half. They won't have a chance of kicking the ball or drop kicking the ball. And and the other side of that is, if they want to run it, they can run it or they can kick it back to you. So most of the chances you either be in possession with less seconds of the ball, or they'll be trying to come to you with the clock running out and they can make a mistake. So it's really hard in rugby to be able to control a game like a final, even with that one pointer. But you try your best to do that by playing in their half and that's the thing with the Springboks, right? They missed a lot of tackles, but the tackles they missed were in the All Blacks half. They weren't in the Springbok half. They committed a lot of penalties, but the penalties were committed were in the All Blacks half. And to a certain extent, that's how they manage the game. And Andre is important to that. Mani is actually a very good kicker for territory and the line. It's just his goal kicking and his ability to play an expansive game of rugby, whereas Pollard can play the expansive game of rugby, but he can control the game between the forwards and himself. And to a certain extent, that's where it is.
Allow me to remove the cap on your head, which is the analyst cap. I want to talk about a few moments, right, where that final, we were quite nervous, right? But don't give me the analysis part of it.
Okay.
Give me your reaction to these moments as a fan. Number one, Bongi Mbonambi getting that injury in like the first 3 minutes of the game. What were you thinking?
Oh man, we just lost the World Cup final.
Literally.
Bongi
And that was...
Bongi was the player that I thought in the 7-1 split was going to complete the 80 games. The 80 minutes, sorry, not the 80 games. And him coming off just added an entire spanner to the works.
Second moment, red card to Sam Cane, All Blacks captain. What were you thinking?
Correct call, but I know this team plays better, the All Blacks play better with 14 men, so we mustn't be complacent.
Siamthanda Khulisi on the bench for those first few minutes, and there's a decision being made in the background. Does he get a red card or does he not get a red card? And it's kept to the yellow card. What were you thinking as a fan?
They're about to take the game away from us.
Sure.
These next 10 minutes are so crucial.
And that was every South African.
And we are in trouble. We are in serious trouble.
The last moment is Cheslin Colby sitting on the bench the last 7 minutes or so of the game, and his jersey is pulled over his head. He's basically crying. South Africa is incredibly nervous. We are leading by 1 point.
Yeah.
What were you thinking?
It's over. They're going to make a line break and they're going to score a try. And the only good thing was it was our winger was out. So,
yes.
So they weren't spreading the ball as much, but it was like, oh, we're down to 14 men again. They're not the All Blacks don't need a lot of invitations to come and beat a team that's got one less man. So the fact that they got through over the line after that was insane. But I felt for Cheslin a lot because he would have felt as though he lost the World Cup for us by his being naughty, as Sia calls it. But like, I understood. I was like, you don't need to do that, dude. We love you. Everything is fine. I really resigned myself to losing the World Cup. I was like, just take the silver medal and come home, guys.
And then that last moment when Wayne Barnes blew the whistle, handing South Africa their fourth
I had to rewatch it.
What do you mean you had to rewatch it?
Because I didn't see the knock on.
Oh.
So I didn't hear him clearly.
Yes.
Because he called it a maul. And then so I was like, okay, cool, it's a maul. But then where's the ball?
Yes.
And normally refs take a little bit longer to do that.
Yes.
And then he just called and I was like, wait, was there a knock on or something? Did New Zealand get the ball somewhere? And then I realized there was a maul, but I was really happy to get through. But we all wanted to get through, and essentially it was make sure that you get a clean scrum, don't lose the penalty, and they didn't. And then now it's just, okay, so now Faf, it's up to you.
Take
and
out the
Andre,
ball.
you need
Stay
to
calm.
decide what you want to do.
Yes.
But Jasper Wiese was like, no, I got this. I'm gone.
Oh, what an absolutely amazing player. Now that we've looked back at this Rugby World Cup, we need to look back at the legacy of this team. And we can talk about 2019, where we knew that we had a solid team. Yeah. We knew that we could compete with the best in the world. But at least for me personally, there wasn't that defined belief that we could win the Rugby World Cup. Different story in 2023, where we are defending champions, but it's almost as though the odds are stuck against us. Talk to me about the legacy that Rassie Erasmus, Jacques Nienaber, and Siamthanda Khulisi have left behind, because going into 2027, it will be a completely different squad with a few new players.
With different expectations as well, right? People will be expecting to three-peat in 2027.
I mean,
why not?
Make some money. It's on the box.
Look, I think the legacy they leave is one where this World Cup was won thinking outside the box. Playing a very different style. Every week it was Rassie and Jacques are doing to the game of rugby is sacrilegious. 7-1s and
how could
bomb squads and everything else, right? And 2019, I don't think anybody expected, because Rassie was a year into his tenure. Essentially, everyone was aiming for this World Cup, but we managed to get through because of good planning. And the legacy they leave is Jacques and Rassie are probably the best coaching duo in world rugby. They put themselves in that conversation. Sia puts himself in the conversation for the greatest captain of all time, rugby captain of all time. It's him and Richie McCaw, back to back, but we have a Lions series in between ours and they don't, and we won a Lions series, so that's another one. And to a certain extent, it's just the way in which this team is playing for more than just the jersey. It's not a job to them, it's a responsibility. And you can see it with the way in which they go about themselves in public, the way in which they go about themselves on the field. and the way in which they carry themselves off of it. And I love it. I love that. And I love the way that Rassie's broken the back of transformation. No one's been called a quota anymore.
Yeah.
The stories of this team have come out, and more people have loved them, you know, than what you would expect. The Springbok emblem is a divisive emblem. It's always been a divisive emblem. And yes, 95 was there, but it was a long time since 95. But from 2009 to 2023, this rugby team has found a way to get themselves back into the hearts of South Africans. And that, for me, is the bigger legacy. And it's going to be hard to have someone who's going to repeat that in 2027. There was a funny joke. If you think about it, right, even the celebs like Roger Federer and all those guys, right, they are drawn by the story of this team.
Yes.
You know, and Siya Kolisi. Siya's friends are really nice. It's a cool thing. But for me, that's the legacy of this team. And I'm glad that they did it, and they did it in a different way. They're always constantly looking to try and change the game. You miss 38 tackles, you should lose the game, but they don't, because somehow they still have more dominant tackles than the All Blacks. You know, that's the type of things that sets you apart, and that's where everyone's now chasing. Can they chase these two, this country in rugby? And we'll see in 2027 if they can.
Most certainly. Mpho Motlwane, thank you so much for joining us throughout the Rugby World Cup campaign, and thank you for your predictions, even though sometimes they weren't necessarily spot on, but they most certainly added so much fun to the show.
Remember, I'm South Africa's honesty broker.
And you can also get it wrong sometimes, and that's okay.
That's the whole point of betting, right? It's a 50-50 call, and I just fell on the wrong side. But thank you very much for this opportunity. Really enjoyed it.
All good. Now, the Rugby World Cup has finally wrapped up. We did it again. Yes, we did it in 1995, where we beat the mighty All Blacks. We did it again this weekend in Paris, France. The question is, can we do it again in 2027 when the world takes upon Australia? We go down under and we try and prove that we are yet again the best rugby playing nation the world has ever seen. Thank you so much for joining us throughout the Rugby World Cup. And as always, we would love to get your thoughts and your comments in the comment section. This is the Fut-Afrique channel.
Stand a chance to win one of 10 money can't buy soccer experiences with Tokosan and our partners. Dial *120*1149# and follow the prompts to enter. Experience a night out for two at the prestigious induction dinner of Dr. Mpho, including luxury accommodation at one of our Tokosan hotels. VIP tickets for two to the Soweto Derby and accommodation at Gold Reef City Theme Park. Plus, an exclusive invite to lunch with some of the Kaizer Chiefs legends. Enter this once-in-a-lifetime competition today. Competition ends 3 November. T's and C's apply. Entertain. It's what we do.